a person who did reform the nation's dignity and honor. He established the society in which all citizens have equal rights, and flatlined slavery of humans in United States of America. Hello viewers, I am Jason Edward. Welcome back to Tea Time Story. Today we brought a true story of a hero who never gave up in his life, who always stood with his nation in their hurdles and problems. Have a seat, with your own comfort zone with a cup of tea, and enjoy listening the story. George Washington was born on February 22, 1732, in Westmoreland County, Virginia. He was the eldest of Augustine and Mary's 6 children, all of whom survived into adulthood. In 1657, Washington's grandfather, Lawrence Washington, moved to Virginia, where Washington's father, Augustine, was born in 1694. Augustine Washington, father of George Washington, was an ambitious man who acquired land and enslaved people, built mills, and grew tobacco. He had an interest in opening iron mines. He married his first wife, Jane Butler, and they had 3 children. Jane died in 1729, and Augustine married Mary Ball in 1731. In 1735, Augustine moved the family up the Potomac River to another Washington family home. Among these are the stories that Washington threw a silver dollar across the Potomac River. In childhood, from age 7 to 15, Washington was homeschooled and studied with the local church sexton, and later a schoolmaster taught them practical math, geography, Latin, and the English classics. Washington's father died when he was 11, and he became the ward of his half-brother, Lawrence, who gave him a good upbringing. Lawrence had inherited the family's little Hunting Creek plantation, and married Annie Fairfax. In 1748, when he was 16, Washington traveled with a surveying party plotting land in Virginia's Western Territory. In same year, aided by Lord Fairfax, Washington received an appointment as the official surveyor of Culpeper County. For 2 years he was very busy surveying the land in Culpeper, Frederick, and Augusta counties. The experience made him resourceful and toughened his body and mind. It also piqued his interest in Western land holdings, an interest that endured throughout his life, with speculative land purchases, and a belief that the future of the nation lay in colonizing the West. In July 1752, Washington's brother, Lawrence, died of tuberculosis, making him the heir apparent of the Washington lands. Lawrence's only child, Sarah, died 2 months later, and Washington became the head of one of Virginia's most prominent estates, Mount Vernon. That time he was 20 years old. Washington early signs of natural leadership, and shortly after Lawrence's death, Virginia's Lieutenant Governor, Robert Dinwiddie, appointed Washington adjutant, with a rank of major in the Virginia militia. On October 31, 1753, Dinwiddie sent Washington to Fort Le Boeuf, at what is now Waterford, Pennsylvania, to warn the French to remove themselves from a land claimed by Britain. French politely refused, and Washington made a hasty ride back to Williamsburg, Virginia's colonial capital. Dinwiddie sent Washington back with troops, and they set up a post at Great Meadows. Washington's small force attacked a French post at Fort Duquesne, killing the commander, Coulon de Jumonville, and 9 others, and taking the rest prisoners. The French counterattacked and drove Washington and his men back to his post at Great Meadows, later named Fort Necessity. After a full day's siege, Washington surrendered and was soon released and returned to Williamsburg, promising not to build another fort on the Ohio River. Washington was given the honorary rank of colonel, and joined British General Edward Braddock's army in Virginia, in 1755. The British had devised a plan for a 3-pronged assault on French forces attacking Fort Duquesne, Fort Niagara, and Crown Point. During the encounter, the French and their Indian allies ambushed Braddock, who was mortally wounded. Washington escaped injury with 4 bullet holes in his cloak, and 2 horses shot out from under him. Though he fought bravely, he could do little to turn back the rout and led the defeated army back to safety. In August 1755, Washington was made commander of all Virginia troops at age 23. He was sent to the frontier to patrol and protect nearly 400 miles of border with some 700 ill-disciplined colonial troops, and a Virginia colonial legislature unwilling to support him. It was a frustrating assignment. His health failed in the closing months of 1757 and he was sent home with dysentery. In 1758, Washington returned to duty on another expedition to capture Fort Duquesne. A friendly fire incident took place, killing 14 and wounding 26 of Washington's men. However, the British were able to score a major victory, capturing Fort Duquesne and control of the Ohio Valley. Washington retired from his Virginia regiment in December 1758. His experience during the war was generally frustrating, with key decisions made slowly, poor support from the colonial legislature and poorly trained recruits. A month after leaving the army, Washington married Martha Dandridge Custis, a widow, who was only a few months older than he. Martha brought to the marriage a considerable fortune, an 18,000-acre estate, from which Washington personally acquired 6,000 acres. He was granted a land for his military service. Washington became one of the more wealthy landowners in Virginia. The marriage also brought Martha's two young children, John, Jackie, age was 6, and Martha, Patsy, age was 4. Washington lavished great affection on both of them, and was heartbroken when Patsy died just before the Revolution, and Jackie died during the Revolution, and Washington adopted 2 of his children. The British Proclamation Act of 1763, prohibiting settlement beyond the Alleghenies, irritated Washington and he opposed the Stamp Act of 1765. He did not take a leading role in the growing colonial resistance against the British, until the widespread protest of the Townshend Acts in 1767. In 1769, Washington introduced a resolution to the House of Burgesses, calling for Virginia to boycott British goods until the acts were repealed. After the Coercive Acts in 1774, Washington chaired a meeting in which the Fairfax Resolves were adopted, calling for the convening of the Continental Congress and the use of armed resistance as a last option. He was selected as a delegate to the First Continental Congress in March 1775. After the battles of Lexington and Concord in April 1775, the political dispute between Great Britain and her North American colonies strengthened into an armed conflict. In May, Washington traveled to the Second Continental Congress in Philadelphia, dressed in a military uniform indicating that he was prepared for war. On June 15, he was appointed Major General and Commander-in-Chief of the colonial forces against Great Britain. He did not seek out the office of commander, but he faced no serious competition. Washington was the best choice for a number of reasons. He had the prestige, military experience and charisma for the job, and he had been advising Congress for months. To be continued. Shortly our next video part 2 will come.